I've got a little talk. Oh, I'm being recorded. Okay. Um, if I run into difficulty, Glenn, don't hesitate to let me know I've disappeared or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yep.
I got to click OK on this to get the. There we are. Okay. Um, I when Glenn asked me to do this, I was a little shy, but which is not a normal feature. But I felt like I really didn't want to go on and sort of say this is here I am, aren't I great? Um, this has been an evolving process, and it's taken a long time. And I thought I'd sort of walk people through my interest in working DX and some of the pitfalls of it, and finally settle in on Bouvet itself, and which I had to work twice, but we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, Glenn, I'm going to go over and share the screen, and I'll put the screen on full size. And if
Yep.
it looks okay, just give me an okay.
Yep.
Oh, great.
Aha. Make it as large as you want.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's not
Yep.
talking to me. How's that?
Ah, beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. So the talk of sorts here is about Bouvet, and um, I'll talk about the number one honor roll, which is an ARL classification. And to qualify for this, you need to have worked mixed phone, CW, or digital, and you must have worked and confirmed every entity in the DXCC list. Currently, there's 340 of them, and it was something. I'll be honest with you. I thought I'd never attain, but I'm pretty close. Anyway, here we go. Um, how did it begin? Um, my first radio was a Hallicrafters S38. It's an old 5.2 radio. It's essentially a table radio put in one of the Hallicrafters cases to make it look quite unique, and it covered shortwave bands up to 30 megahertz, and it had a little band spread on it on the right hand side for tuning in close by stations. It was a pretty lousy radio, but I was only 14, didn't know any better. And I still own it. When we go back to the video from my side, you'll see it over my shoulder, which, well, you can probably see it there now. It's the two dials staring back at it. Um, I bought this radio when my parents were uh, fairly conservative people and had no reason to listen to anything other than CBC and didn't understand my enthusiasm. But as time went on, I found that proved to be fairly useful. I remember one night going downstairs to tell my parents that on the radio the Russians were claiming they'd shot down a spy plane, and my parents said, "Well, it's all propaganda. Pay no attention to it." But as you no doubt know, they did shoot down a spy plane. Unfortunately, through high school and the like, life got in the way. I had friends who were going on to get amateur radio licenses, but I didn't get one for another few decades. And in 1987, I got the call V7ASR. And in those days, the first year of the Canadian ham license was restricted to CW only, and I uh, I played around on CW. The first night I was on the air on HF, my Elmers were on the phone with me, trying to get me to get on the air and call CQ, and finally I did. They selected a frequency that was clear, and I went down and called CQ with perspiration pouring off my face, onto my hands, onto the key and the table and everything else. And little did I know they'd set me up with a guy in New Zealand. So my first
Ah,
contact wasn't to someone in Canada on HF; it was to a guy in New Zealand. So it was quite exciting, and even in those days. But anyway, that's how I got into this. It took me about 3 years to get my first 100 countries. And in those days, it was all no internet, no logbook of the world. It was going to be Canada Post or the Bureau. And the Bureau is notoriously slow. But I made my first 100. I got a certificate for mixed, and that included CW, sideband, and some RTTY, which is now included in the digital stuff. And it took a while, but I was quite excited, as you might imagine. And there you go. Here's a copy of the certificate. There's probably a lot of people on this list have similar. And then eventually I moved on and got a DXCC for CW, for sideband, and for digital modes. As a matter of fact, I even got the digital license when it existed in Canada, and that's not a very common license. It's quite. Let me put it this way: when I took the exam in Kelowna, the Kelowna um, radio people from the government had to phone Vancouver to get the answers because they'd never given this exam before. It was quite interesting. So some people say, why bother with the DXCC? It's they can say I worked it. Why should the ARL get involved in verifying my contacts? Well, yeah, I can see that, and but unfortunately, sadly, as I've said here, sadly things aren't always as they seem. About 1% of the DXCC entities that I've worked were not accepted. Um, Things like I got Bangladesh, um, one of the Northern Macedonia, Turkmenistan twice, and North Korea. I had to work a second time, and many were quite simple errors on the part of the operators, or we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They didn't have all the paperwork from the government. You can imagine going off to another country and wanting to work DXCC or work HF even. They may have restrictions on the license, on power you can run, even on the bands you can operate, if you can operate at all. And for most reasons, most of the time, the rejected ones were because they didn't have the proper paperwork from the authorities, and that's a giant pain. Some, however, were outright lies, and two of them, the operators claimed to be in the country and were not. And these are operators who may have worked CW or sideband and ended up sending physical cards, physical QSL cards that I had requested one. And lo and behold, a few months later, after my $5 included were in an envelope sent off to the operator, I got a card back. The one at the bottom of the screen, P5RS7, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, is from North Korea. As it turned out, it was eventually found out the operator wasn't in North Korea. He was just across the border in Far East Russia. So this one was denied. So every now and then you get a cheater, and sadly, but that's the way it is. That's why I go get them certified. By the way, I am a DXCC card checker. If you ever want them done and go through the process, they file electronically, bring the cards to me or send them to me somehow. I will check them for you, get them back to you, and verify the cards, send off the paperwork electronically to ARL in Newington, Connecticut.
That's great, Rick. Hey, let's just take a break for 2 seconds.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions? I've got everybody on mute, but if you have a question at this point in time, just take yourself off mute and throw a question Rick's way if you have a question.
Or I can pile them up at the end.
Okay, Ron, go ahead. You have to go off mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
I'm just curious of how they found out that the Korean was actually in Russia.
I think some of his crew probably squealed on him. It's a pretty tight community, the Russian operators. I've operated from the Far East, and they're a pretty tight community over there. But this was, he became quite famous, this guy, or infamous. And yeah, I was quite proud of my card until I sent it. In those days, you had to send it off to the card checker or to Connecticut. And I think I sent a bundle off to Connecticut. And it came back and they were approved except for one, North Korea.
Interesting.
However, a few years later, I was able to get North Korea, an illegal one. So.
That's good. Don, do you have a
Thank you.
question?
I just wondered if you paid for any of those bad cards. I don't mean paid, but send us $1 for the QSL or all that stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This one, you send typically you'll send off your card and something to cover the postage. But when it's something that's rare, in those days, if it was $1 for postage, you might throw $5 in with it. But yeah, yeah, you got bitten.
Okay, that's why I was wondering. And you
Yeah.
said you're about 1% were really bad, but my experience is it's more than 1% that you didn't get any QSL cards for. Did you manage to get QSL cards for all the good ones?
Yes, I did. But I mean, of the 340 cards, I have 339. I'm still waiting for Bouvet, but that's another story. 339 cards. I have them all in a binder, physical cards. And these days you don't need that. You could use Logbook of the World. But yes, I have the physical cards, and in some cases they were voluntarily exchanged. In some cases, for rare DX, there was an understanding that you'd at a minimum send them postage and a self-addressed envelope.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Mullis, do you have a question?
Am I off mute?
Yes.
Yeah, so just a quick question, Rick. So I was wondering about as a card checker, I have a number of contacts from a former call sign in a former location, and I can't actually draw upon evidence that I was there and that it was my call sign. Are you able to deal with something like that? If I showed you cards from Prince George in the late 70s, for
No,
example?
no, that's no problem. If they're all from the same entity, and on the application, you will be asked for previous call signs. So you'd fill that in. I have two call signs. Some of the stuff you'll see on the screen here today says V7ASR, some says V7TK, and I was in two different cities, but never a question there though. There because typically on something like DXCC, you're in the same entity. You could work anywhere from coast to coast to coast in Canada.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thanks, gents. We'll take a break at another point in time. Some more questions you can ask if you want. Okay, Rick, back to you.
Yeah, yeah. So I got the DXCC. I filtered out some of the not too nice people who had let's say colorful cards, but of no use to anyone. And then suddenly it occurred to me, I might be able to get 5-band DXCC, which is a fairly old part of the award system in the DXCC program. And it involves getting 100 countries confirmed on 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters. And here I was sitting on a residential lot in BC. I got my license in Kelowna, and then in 91, I moved down here to Victoria. And the biggest antenna I've had is the one that's up there now, and it's a 3-element stepper, 15 meters above the ground. And I also have a 43-foot vertical planted in the front garden and just out of my wife Doris's view from the living room window most of the time. And luckily in 2014, which hard to believe, 16 years ago, I was able to obtain my 5-band DXCC. And this is, I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I years ago, if someone said I'd get 5-band DXCC from a city lot in British Columbia, I would think it was a pipe dream. We're not probably one of the worst locations on the planet for working DX. I say that because unlike our European counterparts, I sit here in BC, and I think it's a roughly 1,600 kilometer radius, or it's a 3,000 kilometer diameter circle, and we have three countries in there. Four. We have Mexico, DXCC entities, Canada, United States, and Alaska. And if you put that same circle through parts of Europe, you'd probably get DXCC right off the bat. but we're in a tough spot here. It's not a good place for working um, piles of DX. That's why it's very hard to get 160 meter um, DXCC. I think Brian from here in Victoria has done it, and I know I just did Steve over on Main Island. He's done it, but it's not that common. Some people have used Canada's geography to an advantage, where they live on the west coast, work a lot of 160 meters off to Asia, and then take off to the east coast and work 160 meters at a from another position which is 4 or 5 thousand kilometers away, and can still say that they're in Canada and quite valid. But unfortunately, I don't know anyone on the East Coast that'll put up with me for a month working 160 meters in the wintertime. But there you go. Anyway, that's 5-band DXCC. Now, next step, which was again another one that I thought would be impossible, and that was to get on the honor roll. And to get to the DXCC honor roll requires that you get within 10 entities of the existing total. And right now there's 340 DXCC entities, countries and special islands and protectorates of one kind or another that meet the criteria. So that means you got to have 331 before you can apply for the honor roll. And I got to this level 12 years ago in 2014. And it's taken me from 2014 to 2026 to get the remaining 10, but it's quite a task. By 2023, I needed only 2 more to work them all, Glorioso Island and Bouvet Island. Eureka, I say here, because in 2023, I worked Bouvet. And that left only Glorioso. And Glorioso's in the Indian Ocean near Madagascar. And Bouvet is in the South Atlantic, in the middle of nowhere. It is really, really in the isolated place. I think it's called the remotest uninhabited island on the planet. Anyway, I worked them in 2023. At least I thought I had. But I discovered that I and probably several hundred others had worked a pirate. And that's the expedition before that, which I think was in 2020 itself. Keith, who was on here earlier, was on a DXpedition to Bouvet. They made it to Bouvet, anchored 1 mile offshore of Bouvet, and then one of the engines on the ship failed, and they never got ashore. They had to pull up anchor and head in an emergency state, limping to Cape Town. So he got there, he saw the island, has a couple of pictures of it, but never set foot on it, which is really quite sad. Anyway, 2024, I worked a one-man operation in Glorioso. Glorioso is a French protectorate in the Indian Ocean. It is a joint military base for the French and a bird sanctuary. And operation there is extremely hard to get permission for. The one-man DXpedition that worked there was a guy in the military, and he operated for about a month, and I was fortunate enough to get him and get a card from him. So again, I only had to work Bouvet, and the Bouvet DXpedition was scheduled for the spring of 2025. And no, that's not a mistype; it was 2025, and I was quite anxious to get to talk to them. So here's where Bouvet is. And it's about 2,500 kilometers south of Cape Town, about 1,600 kilometers from Antarctica. It is in the middle of bloody nowhere. And horrible weather. The winds and winter conditions down there are just amazing. The summer conditions, which the team just got there is on the tail end of summer, are not much better. They ran into some pretty tough conditions with wind, snow, and just general malaise. It was a difficult time for sure. I had hoped to work them on 160 meters. I have an antenna that kind of limps there, but unfortunately, the wind blew their antenna down and they were never able to recover. So even though some people on the West Coast worked them, I wasn't able to. But as you see, it is the middle of nowhere. So yeah. So now, can I get to number one honor roll, which would have happened when I get Bouvet, and it it's taken me 39 years. So who knows? You know, it was possible. Um, the Bouvet was the expedition was delayed until 2026 this year, and they actually started operating March 1st this year, and I think they finished on the 13th. But since the original de-expedition was planned for 2025, that gave me an extra 12 months to get the station in order, and I'm glad I had it because I checked all the cabling in the shack, replaced relays. I have a remote tuner with switched relays at the base of my 43-foot vertical, and all the relays had to be replaced, and it was a good time to do it. Software, etc., was had to be updated and make sure it worked. And then these guys got together, and you know, they got a ship, a helicopter, and I think 23 radio operators, and a budget in excess of 1.7 million. And yeah, a lot of people were not convinced this was ever going to happen. I must admit, I was a little apprehensive myself, but I threw a small donation at them before the expedition started. I figured I should put my money where my mouth is, and I thought I was ready. So off to Bouvet can come, and I'd be ready. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out as planned. And in 2025, my stepper had been up 19 years, and it started having problems. The wiring from the reflector had been broken. I think it's just a case of exposure to the elements, and solar radiation had broken down the insulation and made it brittle. And then the winds moved things enough that it broke one of the wires to the motor on the reflector. So it had to be taken down. And of course, that in itself is an ordeal. Here's one of the photos of me on my 48-foot, 15-meter high tower. But the antenna came down, and I rewired it completely, all three elements. I sanded down, repainted all three elements with marine paint, and put it back up. And while I was doing all of this, the manufacturer, Stepper Antennas, announced that they were no longer going to be making antennas for the amateur radio market, and parts were likely not going to be available for much longer. As it turned out, parts I would eventually need were not available at all. And after I got the antenna, the driven element suddenly failed on me. And I had been in the process of looking for parts, and came across a complete antenna here in town. And David James pointed me towards it, and I brought it home and dismantled it. And within a few weeks of putting up the antenna, I had taken down the driven element, and with Zachariah's help, replaced the driven element with the driven element from the donor antenna. And all seemed to be working. And yes, I had the antenna fixed. However, I was absolutely paranoid, convinced that it would not make it through to Bouvet. That was in September of last year, by the way. Yeah, September, when I finally got it going. So anyway, here was a forecast of the propagation for Bouvet. And it was
Actually, let's
on the
take
left-hand side. Sorry.
Excuse me, Rick, let's just take 1 second here. Any questions from anybody about the previous slides, the hardware and all the rest of that sort of stuff, Rick's preparation?
You've given us a great survey of your antenna system. I'd love to hear you talk about along the way what radios you've used, what kind of systems.
Oh, sure. Well, first antenna I had was a 40 through 10 vertical it planted in the garden. The rig in those days was a Kenwood TS520 hybrid with like 6146 tubes in the finals. And I then went to an ICOM, I think it was a 765, 761, which was a monster of a rig, a very good rig. And then when I moved down here to Victoria, I suddenly got into Ten-Tech gear, and I had an Omni 5, a Hercules 500-watt amplifier that I still own, and a mechanical tuner. And the antenna I used here was a, little Mosley TA33 Junior, and I had a rotatable dipole for the work bands for 12 and 17 meters in those days. Um, Before I went further on the Ten-Tech stuff, I had a cubical quad, 2-element quad, wonderful antenna, but not very good in Victoria. The quad elements moved just enough so that every winter I'd be hanging off the tower trying to repair the wire elements. But great antenna when it worked. And then I think, let's see, about 20 years ago, I think it was, I bought a used a Ten-Tech Orion. And I'm still using that rig today. I've got a lot of QRP rigs I've built in the interim too. I kind of like that stuff. And one of them, I wrote an article for the Canadian Amateur on getting DXCC in, I think it was 40 days with a QRP rig and a decent antenna. I used the stepper, so I did cheat a bit. So yeah, I've gone through a lot of stuff over the years, and virtually all of it has been used. When it came to HF rigs, I don't think other than the QRP stuff, all of my stuff has been handed off from someone else who's been upgrading to something bigger and better. So hopefully that answers your question, Don.
Yeah, no, great, great. Yeah, appreciate that. And only other thing was so the 340 or 341 that you've accomplished, is that sort of equally balanced with digital CW and single sideband, or mostly CW, or what?
I think probably, golly, and that's a toughie. I'd say, okay, 55% sideband, 35% CW, and 10% digital. Digital stuff's just growing. It's
Yeah.
just there's so much going on in digital right now. And I mean, people you couldn't even hear on CW, you can work on FT8. You know, it's crazy.
How many of the 340 are FT8 contacts?
Oh, I would think that the only one that comes to mind as a single FT8 in my case of the 340 would be Glorioso.
Hmm.
And I was the rest are either sideband or CW, or they could be RTTY.
Yeah.
They could be RTTY. That's distinctly possible. I can remember. I think I was in Kelowna when I lived in Kelowna, so that would have been pre-moving to Victoria in '91. I was talking to one of my Elmers and mentioned I'd worked this guy with a funny Japanese call and on RTTY. And they said, that's not Japan, that's Minami Turishima. You know, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So that's in my book of cards. You know, it's pretty rare to work. It's not that rare, but it's not common to find Minami Kurashima on the air, and to find them on the air on teletype on RTTY was quite unique.
Amazing. Okay. Thanks,
One,
Don.
two quick
So
questions.
Oh, sorry, Yvonne. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Yvonne.
Okay, two quick questions. This one's not relevant to Bouvet, but I'm just curious if at the end you could just describe what antenna you were using for the 160. And then the second one with a 5-band accomplishment, was there any proportion that you had to get in each band, or was it just one off of each band? How does that work? Thank you.
Sure. the five band, this thing is jumping around on me for some reason. The five band DXCC is any proportion on at least 100 on each.
Okay.
And let's see now. I think I've forgotten part of your question, the first part of your question.
Oh, the 160 meter, you weren't
Oh,
doing that on
yes.
Bouvet, obviously, but what were you using as an antenna?
Okay. My neatest antenna that I used, and I don't use it anymore, is I shunt fed the tower. And I was able to work Australia on 160. Unfortunately, when I put up the stepper, it's very difficult to without modifying the stepper to um, it's very difficult to shunt feed the tower consistently because the big antenna becomes a capacitive hat, and uh, the elements in that capacitive hat change length because whatever band it was left on last time, it might be 10 meters, there might be a short elements. And then when I go work 160 again, that setting doesn't work anymore because the last time the antenna was set up, it was set up on 20 meters. So this antenna, unfortunately, is not very good for shunt feeding the tower. So I have used my 43-foot vertical, which is very poor on 160, but on good conditions, it gets me into the Caribbean.
All right. Well, I'm impressed because I've only ever had one contact on 160, but there you go. I will keep trying.
Thanks,
Thank
Udon.
you.
Well,
Okay, onwards and upwards, Rick.
okay. So in part of the preparation again, I took a look at the propagation forecast, and the graphic here is one that's put out for the D expeditions. I get a special um, propagation forecast prepared for them by some individual in the States, and Bouvet was no exception. On the left-hand chart is the propagation for Bouvet short path. That is the most direct route to Bouvet. The brighter, the more red-like the color, the more likely the probability of working them at that time on that frequency. On the right-hand side is the long path, which is the short pass about 16,000 kilometers, the long pass about 20, almost 24,000 kilometers. And if you look at these, the chances of looking on working them long path were, well, just slightly above zero. But anyway, down at the bottom, I'll see if I can get my cursor down here. Down at the bottom, these gray spots down here are darkness. And this is darkness in Victoria. This is darkness in Bouvet over here. And the middle is, if you're going short path, the middle between us is in the dark in this section. So, and on the long path, the Victoria and Bouvet numbers are the same, but the time of darkness between us differs. So that's what that's all about. Anyway, I got this chart and I thought, okay, I'm going to look for them on 10 meters around 1800 and short path, and look for them down in here, And I'm sweating bullets because I'm terrified that the stepper is going to blow up in the middle of all this because it's just been repaired. But anyway, we moved on. And I babied the stepper from September last year till March of this year. And finally, Bouvet was on the air. And lo and behold, the first contact didn't even use the stepper. I worked them on FT8 40 meters with the vertical. And I was in shock, very happy, but in shock. And in the end, the stepper came through. It worked long path, short path, all bands, and I was very, very fortunate to work these guys in Bouvet on 8 different bands and on 3 different modes. So I would have been happy with one on any mode, and it just I was very, very fortunate for sure. But I thought I'd go back and show you the how the propagation really worked. And here's the time of day over here. This is 0600, which is here's Victoria. 0600, depending on daylight saving or regular time, it was somewhere around 11 o'clock at night. And late at night, I worked them on digital on 80, 40, and 30 meters. And that's all three of those are on the vertical antenna. Oh, golly, this thing is driving me nuts. And then, so that's right at his sunrise down in here. And then I worked him again near his sunset, and that was on 10 and 12 meters. It's digital and CW. But lo and behold, the signals coming in on long path were absolutely astounding. Real S9 signals coming in at near his sunset. And this was my two sideband contacts on 20 and 17 and a CW contact on 15. I was just absolutely shocked. The window was very, very short, probably 8:45 till 9:30 in the morning. But it was quite civilized because for the rest of the day I could go about doing things and earn brownie points around the house. So these were the two windows I was working. It was near his sunrise and near his sunset. And it was very, quite, you don't sit your watch by it. And I think we had good long path conditions for something like 4 days. And I was able to pick these guys up on two of them, I think. So finally, I just thought I'd summarize here. But, when I started this, there was no logbook of the world. And if you wanted to get a QSL card, you literally had to get a physical card through Canada Post or the DXCC Bureau. And it took forever. And occasionally you get one that said NIL, which are letters you don't want to hear when you're working DX. That stands for not in log. And I've had a few of those over the years, but I know I worked you, but you didn't hear me, or you miscopied my call, which has happened as well. But with Logbook of the World, it's really quite quick. I like physical cards. I have 340 physical cards in a binder, 339 waiting for number 340, and it's really been a task that I've enjoyed undertaking over the years for sure. And the new digital modes are opening up the world to DX for small guns, small stations. You can work with small power and a decent antenna, or you can work with 100 watts and a modest antenna and still work the world. I tell you to persist, though. I think if you were to start as a young person today, you could do this pretty quickly. It took me 39 years, and I think today the biggest drawback is likely going to be, will that station ever be on the air? Places like Turkmenistan and North Korea are examples of stations that ham radio operators are not allowed on the air anymore. They exist, but they're not permitted to get on the air in these locations. And I wanted to point out that when it comes to amateur radio, I've been involved in DX. I've been involved in building. I've been involved in radio direction finding. There's so many facets of it out there, and it's really intriguing hobby, and I've always enjoyed it. Many of the parts of it, if you like to work DX, many of these things overlap, and one of those is contesting. And contesting is a wonderful place if you want to go pick up new countries. A lot of contests, big gun stations open up only for these contests, and the Gambia is one of them that I've worked before, and it's just an intriguing spot. These stations just don't seem to exist, and then suddenly you turn the band on in the contest, and here's the guy that blows the earphones off your head. It's just it's a good way to get new countries if you're chasing DX. Anyway, it's a great hobby, and I've enjoyed it for all these years, and sort of have made good friends. I've been fortunate enough in that I've been in different parts of the world working ham radio and meeting new friends. And I think it's a wonderful hobby. I wish all of you good luck. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Rick. That's great. And I'm going to turn over to questions in just 2 seconds here. I just wanted to once again thank everybody who pitched in some money to get this Zoom account, and this is the start of some good presentations in 2026. I would also like to thank Andy, who's on the call this evening. He used his personal account for close to 2 years and put a whole bunch of the Zoom calls up on the Island HF website. I've taken them from a table which we had there, which linked the presentations to a Zoom account, his Zoom account. We found out that we couldn't transfer those to the Island HF Zoom account, so I put those videos up on the website on the splash screen. As soon as you log in, you'll see them there. There's some really interesting Zoom calls there, which is super. So have a look at them if you're at all interested. So thank you, Andy. That's great. Okay, I'm going to turn over. We're being in here. What time is it? About 45 minutes. I'm going to open up to questions right now. And so who wants to go first? Don?
I wonder if my friend Tom, my neighbor Tom, Tom worked Bouvet. I was unsuccessful. I tried several times, but I wasn't nearly as focused or as prepared as Rick. I'm sure of that. Tom, are you there? Can you tell us what bands and what time you worked Bouvet on?
I'll have to look at the log for the times, but first contact was on 17. So had the Aggie pointed that way, and again, sunset, sunrise windows were approximately when they were happening. That's the lucky thing. I work in my office and the radio's sitting and the screen's up, so when things happen, you sort of catch it when it happens. And it was, so no, actually, I worked 40 meters first on the radio. And then the fun part was David 7DXX, the A7DXX, heard me work him on 17. So he sent me an email, said, congratulations, saw you work him. He worked a little bit earlier and I hadn't seen him work. So then we rolled down to 80, or I rolled down to 80 because that was it, what else was around, and didn't hear anything. So I always worked a few stations on 80. I still had the amplifier on. And all of a sudden they popped up on 80 meters. So
that's great.
Bingo kicked the amp in gear, and there was David working him. So I called him, and I actually got a screenshot of him completing the sequence on FT8 with David V7DXX and starting the sequence with me, right after one after the other in the same line of code. Which I sent him that, and he thought was quite novel. So that was the fun part. And I did get, I think, one bogus call or one bogus contact on, what was it, 12, I think. There was one that I didn't get a confirmation with, so someone else. So yeah, and I think the first contact was only 100 watts. The others took their full kilowatt. So
that's cool. And anybody else who's on the call here this evening contact Bouvet? You did, Ron? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got him once.
Yeah.
Oh, you did, Zachariah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
50 watts on 40 meters.
Fabulous.
Good.
Well, Tom, was your call on CW?
No, all three are on FT8.
Okay.
So I said I was just sort of not sitting here doing other work, and I just looked up and saw the screen. So
Yeah, that's such a pit 58.
Especially one of the things that maybe Rick could comment on. I don't know if you've been doing this over the years, but as I have more or less, but one could not help but notice the extraordinarily poor behavior of some of our amateur colleagues around the world, especially on CW. I found it quite discouraging, actually. What's your comment, Rick? Did you encounter that as well?
To a degree, yes. However, since I'd been bitten 2 years before or 3 years before, whenever same guys were down there working a pirate, I think I was prepared for it. I just, yeah, I can copy up at 50 words a minute now, though, and QSY and up and several things like that. But apparently, when it came to deliberate QRM, apparently we weren't as bad off as some of our European friends. So I think we were pretty fortunate this year. And it's nasty. There's no question it's nasty, and doesn't go with my feeling of how the hobby should run. But
Yep. Yep. Agree. Any other comments, questions? Speak up.
It was interesting watching the spectrum scope. I was an engineer, you sort of look at the spectrum and spread, and whenever there was a response in different bands, basically the whole noise level went up. There was nothing individually decodable, and even the FT8 was having trouble trying to decipher all the different calls. But you just saw this, 10, 15 dB rise right across the spectrum, and then the straight wall when it kicked off. And I found that interesting. And I know Don and I were talking about how do you actually call the guy and find something, and and then it just stopped. There was only one signal. And then boom again. It was really fun to actually watching it on the screen as well as hearing it.
that was beautiful in that on my contacts on Long Path, because suddenly you left half the planet behind because you're going the long way around. And a lot of people are still calling him short path and not making it. And the guy's S9 long path. So I think I had good luck there.
Interesting.
Cool.
Always follow the gray line.
I'm sorry?
Always
Always
follow the gray
follow
line.
the gray line.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Well, it was close.
To a degree, yeah.
That's a good tip, though, isn't it? I mean, if people are not looking long path, or
Well, it's the beauty of the stepper as well. I just push a button to go
yes,
make it
right.
180
Yes, of
degrees
course.
the other way.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions, folks?
A compliment to ARRL and Logbook of the World. I submitted mine a few years ago, and it cost some money. And a few months later, they come back and say, "Here's what you got. Welcome to DXCC."
Yeah.
Well,
No
that's
card.
great.
Well, there was a few cards they had to supply to supplement, but I was actually impressed how simple that was at that stage once it was digitized.
Yes, huge difference.
Well, I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening. We had as many as 24 participants, which is pretty astounding. And we're going to do it again next month. I'll be sending out some information. I've been chatting with Pierre Boucher, who's a Navy guy, and he wants to tell you about Navy antennas from the Second World War. It's sort of cool. Antennas which I didn't know anything about, which is sort of cool. So I invite you to come and join us next month. It'll be the 4th Thursday of April, which looks like the 23rd of April. So I'm going to make certain everybody gets an email on that through the members' notes and others. And I look forward to seeing you all at that time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you,
Okay.
Glenn.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Excellent
Thanks,
presentation.
Thanks, Rick. Yep.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thanks a lot, eh?
Good night, all.